Hello and welcome to the Tea Party Hardy channel. We have come to the end of the season of Star Trek Picard with episode 10, and possibly the end of the show, due to the crisis the world is in and the age of many of the cast members. Of course, we wish nothing but the greatest health for all in this awful time. What can we say after suffering through 10 episodes of a show that is named after a character who barely has a role to play in the show? And when he does, he's often a fill-in character to fulfill exposition because somebody has to do it. He's also regularly insulted in the show, looked down upon throughout most of the series. But we have one major question after reaching the last episode. Where is the dog? The dog was featured right alongside Picard in all the artwork and pushed before the show's run as a great asset. Well, his little asset is never seen again, and after that first episode where the pooch only is on screen for less than 2 minutes, all posters, no show. Doggone it. You'll be happy to see Picard actually does make an appearance in this episode. Here, he makes his grand appearance after 21 minutes of typical material we have come to know and feel ambivalent about at best. Of course, there are still lots of cuss words that find their way into the script yet again, showing the future is not only female-dominated, but also foul-mouthed. Doggone it. It's not just cuss words being used that reflect too much of the present in this fabricated future. There's also an ongoing large dosage of current slang that slips into the show, yet again ripping you out of the future context and creating the expectation to see Bill or Ted show up and go, "Excellent!" When the woman says, "'cause that's a thing," we say, if that expression lives 400 years, then the future's not worth waiting for. We get a clear look at the ship they've been flying around in, and it turns out it's a mock-up of Eddie Van Halen's guitar turned into a spaceship. That was surprising. Pretty sure Bill and Ted would approve of that too. If you thought those flowers that bite, which we met last time, were the only thing from the garden creeping around in space, well, you got another thing coming in this episode. Derivative. To derive from something else. If that's your cup of tea, get ready for a real bladderbuster here. There's lots of borrowed dialogue and visual scenes from Star Wars the original trilogy, but it doesn't stop there from lifting from other source material. No, they even rob Harry Potter for a classic scene. Oh, and yes, finally, a sprinkling of Shakespeare in this Star Trek too. You might even want to scream, "Mercy!" at the point where you hear near the exact same soliloquy used in the final episodes of The Good Place. Contrived is too kind a word for this episode. Certainly all things are an amalgam of what came before, but there is mixing and there are conglomerates. This is far more the latter. If you thought the silliness of a screen filled with spaceships, like Imperial cruisers, couldn't be exaggerated any further than it was in The Rise of Skywalker, you got yet another thing coming. Someone please cue Judas Priest here, but don't get a copyright strike. There is a lot of apocalyptic dialogue that was of course written long before we found ourselves actually living in the apocalypse, and that plays out as eerie as one can imagine, as they say the lines that are supposed to be horrifying for the imagination, but instead all we have to do is look out our sealed windows or turn back on the news to hear near the exact same words repeated in real life. Many of the old-timers who have visited the series reappear in this one, and most are a delight, while at least one makes you wonder why he bothered showing up outside of the paycheck. But then he turns it around and you see, he was just holding back for the right moment. What about character consistency? No way, man! They threw that idea out the window a long time ago. Each week the characters are like a box of Cracker Jacks with a surprise toy inside, except here the surprise is, what will the character act like this week? Hero? Villain? Joker? Dunce? The only way to know is to push through the episode to find out. So, we answer the question now. Was this episode any good? it was okay. Some shining parts among a lot of dull and often repeated scenes stolen from far better products, and some not so better. We're talking to you, Rise of Skywalker. As a finale, there are a few surprises, and when it comes to the climax, your guess from way back in episode 1 reveals you got that guess right. But how could you not in a show so filled with lowered expectations? Was the series worth a watch? Not if you're a Star Trek fan. Not if you think men should exist in the future, and on occasion have something of value to say, and they won't be berated for it. Not if you like shows that have character arcs with characters who remain solid enough along their path you can recognize the arc, and not just be wondering if that is merely who they are for the next 40 plus minutes. And what about the dog? What happened to him? Maybe he was the only one smart enough to know to get in and get out as fast as possible. Doggone it. Thanks for watching. If you were here for the other reviews for Star Trek Picard, well, thanks again for sticking around through all of them and coming back. We hope you enjoyed them. We are done with this one, so not sure what we're going to do going forward, if we've even got any shows to review, especially since there's so little entertainment that's coming out now with everybody on shutdown, lockdown, quarantine, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to end with this. Stay healthy, stay safe, use caution, and we'll see you in the future.